Hello and welcome to what is, I guess, a PSA kind of video. Originally, this was just going to be a thing like, oh, sorry, no videos this week. They'll come back next week. Donkey Kong Country Trilogy fan game and hate everything in quarantine zone. Like, we'll finish all that. So, it'll keep coming. Don't worry. I was just busy dealing with some medical stuff with someone, so I didn't have time to record or edit. Okay, see you next week. Okay, thanks. Bye. Right. This is going to be one of those. And I thought, you know what? No. I, this was such a bizarre thing that I learned about. I'd never seen or heard of before. That, I thought I'd do a quick little PSA video for you so that if you experience this in your life going forward, you'll have a better understanding of what might be happening. And again, this isn't going to be like a full, like, 8-9 hour video recounting the whole day of, this isn't like some noir, like, I woke up, the sky was blue, belying the turbulent times about to come. Because, if I gave you a minute by minute replay, we'd be here forever. And you don't want that, and I don't want that. So, how about just some highlights? All right, so to keep people's, privacy intact, this happened to a family member of mine, but we'll just call them Patient. Patient was visiting Friend, and Friend gave me a call to say, hey, Patient is getting, like, is all of a sudden got very confused about, like, what's going on, why they're here, how they got here. I think they might be having a stroke or TIA. I'm going to take them to the emergency room. And again, Patient has worked in the, medical industry or, medical fields. Friend worked in the medical fields. I'm not a doctor or nurse or anything. I was an English major, but I've also actually worked in the medical, field of stuffs. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of sounds like they might be having a stroke or something. I'll meet you at the emergency room. So off I go to meet them at the emergency room. And to make a long story short, the symptoms they were presenting with were very bizarre. Because, as I said, they were very confused about the moment, the current time, and going back to like maybe a year-ish. But otherwise, were cognitively fine. So like they knew, Patient knew who they were. Patient knew who I was, who Friend was. Patient knew where they grew up. If when we were checking the Patient into the ER, the person said, "Well, what's your phone number?" Patient gave him the phone number just fine. But then 2 minutes later, the Patient's like, "Do I need to give you my phone number?" I'm like, well, you already gave them. I'm like, well, I don't remember doing that. And they had their, I guess what you'd call cognitive functions intact. I mean, obviously, except for all this stuff going on. They could hold a conversation with someone, even if they didn't know what was going on. Later in the day when we saw, someone came by, the, assistant to the doctor, and they did some stuff, came back later, and like, do you remember me? And they said, oh, no, I'm very sorry, but I don't remember ever speaking with you. Right? So it's not like they were garbling their words or were confused. Like, they could hold a conversation, they just didn't know what was happening around them. And furthermore, for any of you who also have experience with medical stuff, they were passing the, basically the stroke test that you do on people when you're waiting, like things like, touch your nose, touch my finger, touch your nose, touch my finger, hold up your hands, try to, see if you can keep them level, grab my hands, push, pull, kick up a foot, kick up the other, all that type of stuff was just fine. Feeling, it's like, does anything feel numb? No. So, right, it's like, fine long-term memory, fine cognitive abilities, fine, passing all the sort of the stroke test stuff with flying colors, but just no idea about what was currently going on. And what the doctor said eventually was, because I was asking, like, well, do you think this is a stroke or something? Because it was kind of taking a while for them to, like, do any imaging. And I'm like, if this is a stroke, we kind of got to get moving, because it's sort of like speed is kind of an important thing. And they said, no, what this sounds like is Transient Global Amnesia, TGA. And the more I read about it, because there was, as I said, I'm fast forwarding a lot of, this was like an 8-9 hour day. So I'm kind of condensing things a bit, but the more I was reading about it, I'm like, wow, this actually sounds exactly like what's going on. And for a second, I want to read from the signs and symptoms on Wikipedia, because it was sort of reading this where I'm like, yes, this is what this is. So, quoting from Wikipedia, One of its notable features is perseveration, in which the victim of an attack faithfully and methodically repeats statements or questions complete with profoundly identical intonation and gestures, as if a fragment of a soundtrack is being repeatedly rerun. This is found in almost all TGA attacks. It is sometimes considered a defining characteristic of the condition. The individual experiencing TGA retains social skills and older significant memories, almost always including knowing his or her own identity and the identity of family members, the ability to perform various complex learned tasks, including driving and other learned behavior. One individual was able to continue putting together the alternator of his car. Also, during episodes of TGA, a person's personality remains intact, and the episode is not associated with loss of consciousness, decreased level of consciousness, or cognitive deficits other than memory impairment. Though outwardly appearing to be normal, a person with TGA is disoriented in time and space, perhaps knowing neither the year nor where they reside. And I'm like, this is 100% what is happening with this person, because sort of to give an example, especially the part about it sounds sort of like a soundtrack being played over and over. To give an example, here's a conversation that I would have with patients saying, do I live in ABC? Do I live at ABC? And I'd say, no, you moved from there about a year ago to 123. And so they'd say, okay, well, why am I here? As in, they knew which emergency room they were at, and they were like, because like, why are we at emergency room farther away from 123? This is what that meant. Why are we here? Because you were visiting friend. Why was I visiting friend? Well, you just wanted to speak with friend, but also friend is pet sitting for other person. And I think you just wanted to say hello to the animals too. Well, where is other person? Other person is on vacation. Well, where did they go? They went to blah, 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 blah. Oh, so if I can't remember this, am I having a stroke? I don't know. That's what we're in here to check. And then, 10, 20, 30 seconds, maybe a minute later, okay, but why am I here? Because you were visiting friend. Why was I visit? Repeat. I had that conversation or a variation of it 30 times, 50 times, 100 times. Yeah, I didn't count, but I had that conversation a lot. And it really did feel like it's basically this person, patient was just going back in time like a minute. And so they'd ask the same question over and over. Well, not just the same one question, it's not just one thing, but, this sort of same chunk of stuff over and over again. And so when when the doctor said transient global amnesia, and then I started reading about this, I'm like, this is exactly what it is. And so now we sort of get to the point, why am I telling you all of this? Why didn't I just say, I was busy with medical stuff, okay, bye. Well, first of all, here's kind of the golden light at the end of all this is, for something that's like really messed up in your brain, it's kind of one of the best things you could get, because, first of all, it's just over quickly. It lasts anywhere from 2 to 8 hours. And then you're fine. I mean, and you can sometimes take up to a day to fully recover. But basically, after 2 to 8 hours, it's over for the most part. You might be, again, a little fuzzy, up to 24 hours later, but then it's fine. It just goes away. And it's very weird because no one really knows what causes TGA. There's a lot of theories and a lot of things like, well, migraines could contribute to it. If you have a history of seizures, that could contribute to it. If you're stressed, either physically or mentally, that can contribute. It's not like, person fell downstairs, landed on their leg wrong, leg broke, cause effect. This is like, well, there's all of this, which maybe kind of does this, but we're not really sure. And, and it's hard to study because it comes on just like, bam. This is like, you're fine 1 minute, you're not fine the next. But then it's gone, not as quickly as it comes on, but you're, 2 to 8 hours and it's over. So people aren't even really sure what's going on. Again, it's like, oh, well, I can see, you had like leg bone that was like this. Now it's like this. Therefore, it's broken. And studying, it's like, well, like, clearly we can see that this person doesn't have, they have the inability to make short-term memory, and like they kind of forget stuff. In patient's case, it was kind of up to a year-ish. But clearly, there's not like a hard line, but it's like newer stuff forgot, older stuff remembered. And it's so bizarre. I'd never heard of it. But, it's, I don't know. I haven't like rehearsed this or anything. I'm just kind of winging it. So I'm kind of repeating myself here. But again, it's not like it's something you want to have, but if you have it or someone has it, it's not that, like, not that bad comparatively because it's over so fast. And, going on why it's not so bad, you're not like, it doesn't cause it to happen in the future. Now, again, there's not been a lot of studies on stuff, and like, one person said like, well, maybe there's like a tiny increasing, but basically, if you have this, it's possible. It is technically possible. There have been cases of people who have had this more than once, but it's not like, like if you badly like twist your ankle or something, right? That kind of like messes up the joint, and so in the future it's more easy to twist. It's not like that. Sort of, and this is, again, not, I'm not a doctor or a nurse or a neurologist or anything like that, but basically the way I was summing it up to things is like, the chance for patient to have it happen again is the chance that I will have it, the chance that you will have it. It's just not likely to happen again. It just happens. So again, like, it's certainly better than a stroke or something, like a brain bleed or a tumor or anything like that. Like, it's not great. It's definitely, scary for, the people on the outside looking in, being like, wow, they have no short-term memory. Like, this would be completely debilitating. And it's confusing for the person. And again, like, I guess someone could be, like, scared or whatever, like, not having a great time. But again, with patient, it was just, they were very confused, but weren't, like, alarmed, because they never really had a chance to be alarmed, because their mind just kept resetting back every, like, 2 minutes. So it was like, they don't have time to even be scared about anything. They're just like, what's going on? Why is this? Is this what it sounds like? Oh, okay. What's going on? What that is? Okay. And so, yeah, I just wanted to tell you this, because again, it's you've heard of heart attacks, and you've heard of strokes, and you've heard of, brain tumors, and you've heard of, breaking legs, breaking people's legs if your kneecap. You know what I'm trying to say. You've heard of all that. You might not have heard of transient global amnesia before, and I just want to say, like, and again, I'm not giving medical advice. I'm not a doctor. A little asterisk at the bottom. Not a doctor coming up. But if this happens to someone that you know, and you're sort of their caregiver for the day or whatever, it's very alarming at first, but and again, get them checked out. I'm not saying like, oh, you heard a streamer YouTube person talk about this, so we're not going to bring you to the hospital. Like, obviously, if someone has like sudden onset confusion, make sure they're not having a stroke or anything, right? Like, because that's very serious, and you want to get that dealt with very quickly for better odds of survival. But if you get checked, like, well, okay, there is no stroke going on, no bleed, and they're doing the boop 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 test just fine, and like they have their memory and their cognitive functions and all that intact. If the doctor that you're, with hasn't heard of it, here's something that you might be able to suggest or understand, like, hey, maybe it's this, and while this is not fun, it is something that will go away, and within a day, everything's gonna be fine. And because I'm telling you, you might be able to help diagnose yourself if this ever happens to you. Now, again, like, if I tell you this, you watch this video and you're like, huh, transient global amnesia, how interesting, and then you're immediately hit with it, you're not going to remember this. But 20 years from now, if you're just like, that video stuck with me, man, human brains sure are weird, and then all of a sudden, it happens to you, and someone, you don't know what's going on, but you're like, well, where am I? You're at the emergency room. Why am I at the emergency room? Because you keep forgetting, current stuff, have I had imaging? Yes, we did an MRI, and you're not having a stroke or anything like that. You might be able to say, because it's in your long-term memory now, huh, that kind of sounds like TGA. So that's why I thought I should just talk about this and, share it with you. Yeah, I don't have any... I don't have anything else to say because I never planned any of this anyway. It was just like, let's make a short video saying there won't be any like Donkey Kong this week, and then I'm like, you know what? Just to put it out there in case you've never heard of it, now you have. So that's all I got. Now, Patient is doing fine now. They're fine. I'm fine. Everyone's fine. Brains are really weird. That's all I got. So I will see you next week after I have time to actually, record and edit, because I'm not spending 9 hours in an emergency room and then spending, the night with someone, because understandably, Patient was still, even after this kind of lifted, they were still a little worried about stuff, and like, I don't want to drive home myself. I'm like, yeah, I get it. So I'll see you then. Yeah. Brains are weird. That's my summary.